Professor Mujkund Dubey, Mr. Louis George Ashno, Professor Tilak, Shri Ambesh Rai, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for inviting me here to address this convention on a very pertinent issue. The idea of education as a means to social change and equality informed the vision of our founding fathers as they drafted India's constitution. Equality of opportunity as outlined in the preamble of the constitution has been widely interpreted to include equality in the provision of education. The Constitution 86th Amendment Act of 2002, which made elementary education a fundamental right, and its consequential legislation, the Right to Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act of 2009, popularly known as the RTE Act, represents a momentous step forward in the history of our republic. The Act was a groundbreaking piece of legislation, the first in the world that puts the responsibility of ensuring student enrollment, attendance, and completion of elementary education on the government. The cornerstone of RTE is provision of free and compulsory primary education though the aim is also to provide increasing access to learning opportunities at secondary, technical and higher levels. It was emphasized that under the RTE Act, teaching and learning processes would be stress-free. A program of curriculum reform was also envisaged to provide for a child-friendly learning system, which is at once relevant and empowering. On 31st of March this year, we will mark 6 years of the coming into force of the right of education. An audit is therefore appropriate, particularly to locate the deficiencies that exist and chart out a course for the future. In the last 6 years, the Right to Education Act has shown promising developments. The government's budget for Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the main vehicle for the Act's implementation, has increased substantially from 12,825 crores in 2009-10 to 22,500 crores in 2016-17. Some 3.5 lakh schools have been opened in the last decade, and 99% of India's rural population now has a primary school within a 1 kilometer radius. A survey in the year 2014 reported that 84.4% schools now serve the midday meals, that 48.2% schools had proper and functioning toilets for girls, and 73% schools had available drinking water. The enrollment of girls has increased slightly from 48.12% in 2009-10 to 48.19% in 2014-15 at the elementary level. For boys, the enrollment at primary levels is now 52%. A 55% decline in dropouts was also reported in the age group 6 to 14 years, from 13.46 million in 2005 to 6.06 million in 2014, with the annual average primary school dropout rate declining from 6.8% in 2009-10 to 4.3% in 2013-14. These are significant gains, and yet a critical appraisal of the functioning of the right to education reveals that large gaps exist in its implementation. Even with the increasing primary enrollment rates, India has the largest number of out-of-school children in the world, which is more than the out-of-school children in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. There is a huge disparity between the urban and rural education, and rich and poor children have radically different schooling experiences. One of the most stringent criticisms of the RTE has been the quality of education being provided. The Global Monitoring Report for 2012 ranked India a low 102 out of the 120 countries on the Education for All Development Index, based on progress in universal primary education, adult literacy, gender parity, and equality of education. Some surveys have revealed that while enrollment in elementary education in our country has increased, there has been a decline in the educational outcomes, with abilities in reading, writing, and other comprehensive skills deteriorating amongst children between the ages of 6 and 14 years. For instance, only a fourth of all children in Standard 3 could read a Standard 2 text fluently, a drop of more than 5% over 5 years, according to the 2014 Annual Status Report on Education, or ASER. About 1,15,625 crores, or $17.7 billion has been spent on Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the national program for universal elementary education, and a core element for implementing the RTE over the last 5 years. So the decline in the quality of learning is particularly disturbing. Low learning and falling quality education imparted to children have grave implications for the future of our society and the country. This should be a cause for serious concern to the government. The quality of education suffers due to understaffing and lack of training of teachers. The flow of public funds has so far been focused on developing school infrastructure. Teacher training has been a neglected area. An Oxfam India policy report in March 2015 indicated that over 5 lakh sanctioned teachers' posts were lying vacant, 5 lakhs, and more than 6.5 lakh in-service teachers were undertrained. Around 37% of primary schools were found to be non-conformant with the prescribed national pupil-teacher ratio norms of 30:1. Moreover, around 10% of schools across the country remained single-teacher schools. Teacher absenteeism, which is rampant in several parts of the country, particularly impacts the disadvantaged students. The UNESCO EFA monitoring report for 2014 noted that teacher absenteeism in India varied from 15% in Maharashtra to 42% in Jharkhand. We need many more good teachers, and the only way to do that is to make the remuneration more attractive recruit better teachers, provide them with better training, and monitor their performance and availability closely. The next major challenge is the high number of dropouts and out-of-school children. Answering a question in the Rajya Sabha on the 10th of March this year, the Minister for HRD said that in the year 2014, some 6,064 million children remain out of school. There has been an expansion in the number of schools, but the Right to Education Forum Stocktaking report for 2014 suggests that across the country, less than 10% schools comply with the RTE norms. State and national child rights commissions have been working actively with governments to reduce the percentage of children out of school. Despite such efforts, we continue to see children working at roadside restaurants, in people's homes, at construction sites, in shops, and on the road. However, to pick these children up and put them to school is hardly as easy as it sounds. To begin with, rescue of child laborers and punishing the employer is the work of the Labour Ministry and the State Police. The responsibility of bringing children to school and providing them quality education is the work of education departments. Then again, monitoring implementation of RTI Act is the responsibility of the child rights commissioners in each state, which are under the Women and Child Development Department. So in the process, nobody owns up the responsibility. Coordination between various implementing agencies has to be improved to develop synergies and create an environment conducive to promoting the right to education rules. The third issue relates to the absence of equity in education. Of the 6,064 million out-of-school children, a whopping 4.6 million or 76% belong to scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other religious minorities. Issues such as those relating to the 25% reservation of seats for children from disadvantaged backgrounds in private schools, poor educational infrastructure in rural areas compared to urban centers, cases of discrimination on the basis of caste, and neglect of targeted elementary education schemes for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and other backward communities are serious in nature. Inclusive education is inherent in RTE, and the government must address these issues expeditiously. Friends, it is said that quantity, quality, and equality are the three sides of the triangle required to ensure right to education. Without any one of these arms, the triangle will collapse. In this backdrop, the decline in state funding in the key social sector programs, including education, is of particular concern. Public services like education are the key to nurture participatory growth. Financing for right of education remains inadequate. The total public expenditure for education at less than 3.5% of GDP is well below the 6% commitment made in the national educational policies. At 52%, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan received more than half the money under school education allocation in the latest budget. But over the last 5 years, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan budget has declined by 6% from 23,873 crores in 2012-13 to 22,500 crores for the year 2016-17. While school education is primarily the responsibility of states, the central government directly finances 60% of education through programs such as Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. As many as 66% of India's primary school students attend government schools or government-aided schools. Poor offtake from the schemes is another area of concern. Of the money set aside for Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan during the 2015-16, only 57% was released till September 2015, according to an Accountability Initiative report. In addition to increasing the government investment in education, it is also essential to maintain the funding levels of other social welfare schemes, especially those operating in the rural areas, to ensure that falling incomes of parents do not impact the educational prospect of in-school children. Ladies and gentlemen, legislation is one aspect of the matter. The experience gained in operating the RTE for the past 6 years should inform the correctives to reduce the gaps and overcome the shortcomings. Although state education departments and local education authorities are responsible for monitoring the implementation of the Act, this responsibility needs to be taken more seriously. There is a need for having a special audit mechanism like it is in the case of Manrega. The immense relevance of inclusive education, particularly of disadvantaged groups, therefore demands, firstly, vibrant partnership amongst the departments, organizations concerned with children of the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and educationally backward minorities. Government will have to set up systems for equal opportunity for children with special needs. Secondly, acceleration of poverty reduction programs of the rural development and Panchayat Raj departments so that children are freed from domestic chores and wage earning responsibilities. And thirdly, ensuring that state governments get the Panchayat Raj institutions appropriately involved so that the local authorities can discharge their functions under the RTE Act. There is a need for close cooperation amongst departments concerned to ensure that so far the deprived children get their right to education. The transition towards a comprehensive implementation of right to education will come through making parents, particularly in rural areas, aware of the benefits of education for their children. This requires a change of mindset at the community level and accountability of all entrusted with this responsibility. Despite the shortcomings in its implementation, the Right to Education Act remains a remarkable achievement. While concerns regarding privatization of education remain, the Act offers a first step towards an educational system in India that provides access, equity, and inclusion of all children. I wish you success in your deliberations. Jai Hind.